chosen one. Something changed in you, and now people feel it before you even speak. They can't read you anymore, and that's what's making them uncomfortable. You didn't announce it, you didn't explain it. But when you walk into a room now, something goes quiet. Not because you're trying to be noticed, but because your energy is no longer asking for anything. And that's what's shocking them. Before, they could read you. They knew how you would react, what would trigger you, how to pull you into conversations, drama, or attention. But now, you don't respond the same. You pause more. You observe more. You don't rush to fill silence anymore. And that silence, it's unsettling to people who were used to accessing you easily. You might have noticed it already. People stare at you longer than usual. Some try to figure you out without speaking. Others act awkward, like they don't know which version of you they're dealing with anymore, because the version they knew no longer exists. This isn't about confidence in the loud, external way. This is deeper. Your energy has become grounded, contained, self-sufficient. You're no longer seeking validation through reactions. You're no longer explaining yourself just to be understood. Chosen one, you've gone quiet in a way they can't read anymore. If you felt this shift, comment Amen below. Stay in that space and subscribe quietly for more. And when someone can't read you anymore, they start questioning themselves. That's why some people seem distant now. Not because you did something wrong, but because your presence is forcing them to face something within themselves they weren't ready to see. You've become a mirror without trying to be one, and for some, that reflection is uncomfortable. They were used to the version of you that was more open, more expressive, more available. But now, you're selective with your energy. Not cold, not closed, just aligned. And alignment doesn't chase, it doesn't prove. It doesn't adjust just to keep others comfortable. That's why their reactions feel different. Some are drawn to you more than ever, but don't know how to approach you. Others pull away because your presence quietly exposes their inconsistencies. And the most interesting part, you didn't try to become this way. This wasn't a strategy. This wasn't a strategy. This wasn't something you forced. It happened as you started letting go of needing approval, of over-explaining, of emotionally reacting to everything. You started choosing peace even when no one noticed. And now, everyone notices. That's the paradox. The less you tried to be seen, the more undeniable your presence became. And they feel it. They feel that you're no longer easily influenced, that your mood isn't controlled by others anymore, that your energy isn't leaking in every direction. It's steady now, and steady energy is rare. That's why they're shocked, because they expected you to stay the same. They expected access, reactions, familiarity. But what they're encountering now is someone who has quietly stepped into a different frequency, and they don't know how to interact with that yet. So they watch, they hesitate, they overthink, while you simply exist in your own space. This is what happens when your inner world changes. The outer world doesn't immediately understand, but it always reacts. And right now their reaction is confusion, curiosity, and silent recognition. Because even if they can't explain it, they can feel that you're not the same anymore. And what unsettles them even more is that you didn't need anything external to become this version of yourself. There was no dramatic announcement, no moment where you tried to prove your growth. It happened in silence, in moments no one was watching, in decisions you made when it would have been easier to stay the same. You started choosing yourself in small, quiet ways. You stopped over-explaining your intentions to people who were committed to misunderstanding you. You stopped shrinking your presence just to maintain comfort in spaces that were never meant to hold your evolution. You stopped reacting immediately and started understanding deeply. And over time, that inner shift began to reshape your entire energy. Now when you stand somewhere, you're fully there, not divided between thoughts of the past and worries about how you're being perceived. Not scanning the room for approval or rejection, just present. And presence like that carries weight. People who are used to surface-level interactions don't know how to meet you there. They feel it, but they don't have the language for it. That's why some of them become overly aware around you. They fix their posture. They choose their words more carefully. They hesitate before speaking because your energy no longer invites unconscious behavior. You're not correcting them, you're not judging them, but your stillness, your awareness, your restraint, it naturally creates a space where anything inauthentic feels exposed. And for someone who isn't used to being seen beyond their surface, that can feel intimidating. This is why you might notice a strange mix of reactions. Some people try harder to impress you now, even if they don't understand why. Others withdraw completely because they can no longer engage with you the way they used to. And then there are those who simply watch you, quietly observing, trying to understand what changed. But what they don't realize is this wasn't a sudden transformation. This is the result of everything you chose not to become. All the times you could have reacted but didn't. All the moments you felt triggered but chose awareness instead. All the situations where you could have chased validation but decided to sit with yourself. Those moments built something inside you, something stable, something grounded, something that doesn't need constant reinforcement from the outside world. And now, that internal stability is visible, even without words. It's in the way you look at people, without trying to prove anything. It's in the way you listen, without needing to interrupt or control the conversation. It's in the way you walk away from things that don't align, without creating noise around it. You've become someone who doesn't need to be understood by everyone, and that is where your power truly began. Because once you stop needing universal acceptance, your energy naturally becomes more refined. You become selective, not out of ego, but out of clarity. You start recognizing where your presence is valued and where it's merely tolerated. You feel the difference between genuine connection and subtle obligation. And instead of forcing things to work, you allow distance where it's needed. That's another reason they feel different around you. You're no longer overextending yourself to maintain connections that are no longer aligned. You don't chase conversations. You don't fill every silence. You don't try to fix every misunderstanding. You let things be what they are. And that kind of detachment, it's not cold, it's peaceful. But to someone who is used to emotional intensity, constant engagement, and predictable reactions, peace feels unfamiliar, even threatening, because your calm presence highlights how much noise they carry within themselves. Without saying anything, you become a contrast, and contrast always creates awareness. That's why some people seem drawn to you without knowing why. They feel something stable in you, something they don't often experience. But at the same time, that stability challenges them, because it shows them what they've been avoiding within themselves. And not everyone is ready for that kind of reflection, so they stand at a distance trying to make sense of you, trying to decide whether to move closer or step away. Meanwhile, you're no longer focused on how you're being perceived. You shifted your attention inward, not in a disconnected way, but in a grounded way. You check in with yourself before responding. You observe your own energy before engaging with others. You move with intention rather than impulse. And this changes everything, because now your actions come from alignment, not reaction. You're not easily pulled into other people's emotional states anymore. You don't absorb everything around you the way you used to. There's a boundary now, not built from resistance, but from awareness. And people can feel that boundary, even if they don't understand it. They feel that you're no longer available in the same way, not because you're distant, but because you're centered. And centered people, they don't give their energy away unconsciously. They choose, they discern, they remain steady, even when everything around them is shifting. That steadiness, it changes how people interact with you. Some will respect it, even if they don't fully understand it. Others will test it, trying to see if they can get a reaction out of you. But what surprises them is that you don't respond the way you used to. You don't get pulled in, not because you're suppressing anything, but because there's nothing in you that needs to react anymore. And that's the part they can't comprehend. Because most people are used to engaging through reaction, through emotional exchange, through validation, through mutual stimulation, but you stepped out of that cycle. You're no longer feeding interactions just to keep them alive. You're allowing things to either align naturally or fall away. And that quiet discernment, it reshapes your entire reality. You start experiencing fewer forced connections and more meaningful ones. You spend less time explaining yourself and more time understanding yourself. And slowly, your external world begins to reflect your internal clarity. The noise reduces, the confusion fades, the need to constantly engage disappears, and in its place there's a quiet sense of certainty. Not loud, not performative, just steady. And that steadiness, it speaks louder than anything you could say. That's why they're watching you now, even if they don't admit it. Because something about you feels different, but also familiar, like a version of themselves they haven't fully stepped into yet. And whether they move closer or drift away, one thing remains clear: your energy has changed, and there's no going back to who you used to be. Not because you're forcing yourself to stay this way, but because you've seen something within yourself that can't be unseen anymore. Something quiet yet undeniable that showed you what it feels like to exist without constantly seeking, without constantly adjusting, without constantly explaining your presence to people who were never truly listening in the first place. You've tasted a different kind of inner space, one that isn't chaotic, one that isn't dependent on external validation, one that doesn't collapse the moment someone misunderstands you or fails to meet you where you are. And once you experience that kind of internal stability, returning to old patterns doesn't just feel difficult, it feels unnatural. That's why even when you try to act the way you used to, it doesn't sit right anymore. The conversations that once entertained you now feel draining. The need to constantly engage feels unnecessary. The urge to prove yourself feels distant, almost foreign. And people notice that shift in subtle ways. They notice that you're no longer as reactive. They notice that you don't laugh at things you don't genuinely find funny anymore. They notice that your attention isn't as easily captured. And what they feel from you now is something they can't easily influence. Before, your energy could be pulled in different directions depending on the environment, depending on who you were around, depending on what was being said or done. But now, your energy remains consistent. And consistency is powerful in a world where most people are constantly shifting based on external conditions. You've become internally anchored, which means you don't rise and fall with every opinion, every reaction, every moment of external feedback. You remain steady. And that steadiness creates a kind of silent authority. Not authority in a controlling or dominant sense, but in a grounded, self-contained presence that doesn't need to assert itself to be felt. That's why when you speak now, people listen differently. Not because you're speaking louder, but because your words carry weight. They're not rushed, they're not scattered, they're not coming from a place of needing to be heard. They're coming from a clarity. And clarity has a frequency that people can feel even if they don't consciously understand it. This is also why you become more comfortable with not speaking at all, because you've realized that not every moment requires your input. Not every silence needs to be filled. Not every situation needs your reaction. And in that restraint, there's a deeper level of awareness that begins to unfold. You start seeing things you didn't notice before. The way people reveal themselves through small inconsistencies, the way energy shifts in a room depending on who enters or leaves, the way certain conversations are driven by insecurity rather than authenticity. You become more observant, not in a judgmental way, but in a clear and grounded way. And that awareness naturally changes how you engage. You're no longer pulled into every dynamic. You're no longer available for every interaction. You choose, not based on impulse, but based on alignment. And alignment, it simplifies everything. You don't overthink as much. You don't second-guess your decisions as often. You don't feel the need to revisit every interaction wondering if you said the right thing, because you're moving from a place that feels true to you in the moment. And that kind of self-trust, it builds quietly. It's not something you announce. It's something you embody. And once it's there, it becomes the foundation of how you move through the world. That's why even your presence in familiar spaces feels different now. Places that once felt comfortable may now feel restrictive. Environments that once felt normal may now feel overwhelming or misaligned. Not because those places changed, but because you did. Your sensitivity to energy has increased, not in a fragile way, but in an aware way. You can feel when something is off without needing evidence. You can sense when someone's words don't match their intention without needing them to admit it. And instead of ignoring those signals like you might have before, you honor them. You trust what you feel, even when it's inconvenient, even when it means stepping back, even when it creates distance between you and people who were once close. And yes, that distance can feel unfamiliar at times. There are moments where you might notice the quiet more than usual, moments where the lack of constant interaction feels strange, almost like something is missing. But if you stay present with it, you begin to realize that what's missing isn't connection, it's noise. And once you recognize that, the quiet no longer feels empty. It feels peaceful. It feels like space to think clearly, space to feel without pressure, space to exist without constantly being pulled in different directions. And within that space, something deeper continues to unfold. Your relationship with yourself strengthens. You start understanding your own patterns more clearly. You become aware of your own energy in ways you weren't before. You recognize when something feels aligned and when it doesn't. And instead of overriding that awareness, you move with it. You begin to trust your own timing. You stop forcing outcomes. You stop chasing clarity from external sources. Because you've realized clarity doesn't come from outside. It emerges when you're grounded enough to listen within. And that internal listening, it changes how you experience everything. You become less reactive to uncertainty, less attached to immediate answers, less dependent on constant reassurance, because there's a quiet knowing developing inside you. Not loud, not dramatic, but steady and present. And even if you can't always explain it, you feel it guiding you, in the way you choose where to go, in the way you decide who to engage with, in the way you respond or choose not to respond at all. And as this continues, your energy becomes even more refined. You start attracting different kinds of interactions, more intentional, more grounded, more aligned with who you become. And at the same time, anything that doesn't match that frequency begins to fade more naturally. Not through conflict, not through force, just through lack of alignment. And that's something many people around you are still trying to understand, because they're used to relationships being maintained through effort, through constant communication, through emotional exchange. But what you're embodying now is different. You're showing that connection doesn't need to be forced to be real, that presence doesn't need to be loud to be felt, that energy doesn't need to be explained to be understood. And for those who are ready, this will draw them closer to you in a genuine way. But for those who aren't, it will create distance. And both are necessary, because where you are now requires a different level of alignment. Not everyone can meet you here. Not everyone is meant to. And the more you accept that, without resistance, without needing to change it, the more natural everything begins to feel. You stop questioning the shifts. You stop trying to hold on to what's no longer aligned. And you allow your life to rearrange itself based on who you've become. And in that allowing, there's a quiet transformation still unfolding. One that doesn't need validation. One that doesn't need recognition. Because it's not about being seen anymore. It's about being fully, clearly, and unapologetically aligned with yourself. And the deeper you settle into that alignment, the more you begin to notice something subtle yet powerful unfolding within you. A kind of inner silence that isn't empty but full. A silence that doesn't come from withdrawal but from understanding, from no longer needing to mentally chase every thought, every reaction, every external shift just to feel stable. This silence becomes your foundation. Not the kind of silence where you feel disconnected or numb, but the kind where everything inside you feels organized, grounded, and intentional, where your thoughts no longer race to keep up with everything happening around you, and instead they move only when necessary, only when aligned with what truly matters. And because of this, your presence begins to feel even more distinct. People don't just notice that you've changed, they feel that there's something deeper behind your stillness, something they can't quite reach, something that doesn't respond the way they expect it to. You're no longer energetically available to everything. Not every opinion reaches you. Not every emotion affects you. Not every situation pulls you in. And this creates a kind of energetic boundary that doesn't need to be explained or enforced. It simply exists. That's why certain people begin to feel like they can't access you the same way anymore. They might try to engage you the way they used to, using the same tone, the same patterns, the same expectations. But something doesn't connect. Because you're not meeting them from the same place anymore. You're not responding from old habits. You're not reacting from past wounds. You're not engaging from a need to maintain familiarity. You're present, but you're not available in the same unconscious way. And that difference, it shifts the entire dynamic. It either invites people to rise into a more conscious way of connecting, or it naturally creates distance, and what's important is, you're no longer trying to control which one happens. You're allowing people to meet you where you are, or not at all. And that level of acceptance, it brings a kind of peace that isn't dependent on outcomes, because you're no longer trying to make things work that don't align. You're no longer negotiating with your own awareness just to keep connections intact. You're honoring what you feel, even when it's quiet, even when it's subtle, even when it doesn't make logical sense to anyone else. And this is where your trust in yourself deepens even more, because you begin to realize that your awareness, your intuition, your sense of alignment, it's not random, it's guiding you, not loudly, not forcefully, but consistently. In the moments where something feels slightly off and you choose to step back instead of pushing forward. In the moments where silence feels more aligned than speaking. In the moments where distance feels more honest than forced closeness. You start moving with that guidance without needing external confirmation. And that's when your life begins to feel different in a way that's hard to describe. Not necessarily easier, but clearer, more intentional, more aligned, less chaotic. You begin to experience less internal conflict because you're no longer divided between what you feel and what you think you should do. You're no longer overriding your inner signals just to meet external expectations. You're choosing congruence. And congruence, it simplifies everything. Your decisions become cleaner. Your interactions become more authentic. Your energy becomes more contained. And as a result, your presence becomes even more impactful without you trying to make it that way. Because people can feel when someone is fully in alignment with themselves. It creates a kind of energetic clarity that doesn't need to be explained. And that clarity, it naturally commands a different kind of respect. Not the kind that comes from trying to impress, but the kind that comes from being internally consistent. From not shifting your values depending on who you're around. From not adjusting your energy just to fit into spaces that no longer resonate. And even though you're not seeking that respect, it arrives quietly, through the way people listen to you more attentively, through the way they become more aware of their words around you, through the way they sense that your presence isn't something casual anymore. It's intentional, and intentional carries weight. At the same time, you may also notice that your tolerance for certain things has changed, not in a reactive way, but in a clear way. Things that once felt acceptable now feel misaligned. Conversations that once felt normal now feel draining. Dynamics that once felt familiar now feel unnecessary. And instead of forcing yourself to stay engaged, you naturally step back, not dramatically, not emotionally, just quietly. And that quiet withdrawal, it often says more than any explanation ever could. Because you're no longer trying to convince anyone of your perspective. You're simply living in alignment with it. And that shift, it removes a lot of unnecessary tension from your life. You stop trying to fix how others perceive you. You stop trying to manage every interaction. You allow things to unfold based on truth rather than effort. And in doing so, you create space. Space for more aligned connections. Space for deeper understanding. Space for a different kind of experience, one that isn't built on constant external engagement. And within that space, something else begins to emerge, a quiet confidence. Not the kind that needs to be displayed, but the kind that exists regardless of who's watching. A confidence that comes from knowing that you can trust yourself, that you can navigate your own energy, that you don't need to rely on external validation to feel stable. And this confidence, it changes the way you move. You become more patient, more observant, more intentional. You don't rush into things the way you used to. You allow things to reveal themselves instead of trying to figure everything out immediately. And this patience, it protects your energy. It keeps you from investing in things prematurely. It allows you to see situations more clearly before engaging. And over time, this creates a different kind of life experience. One where you're not constantly reacting but consciously choosing. And the more you embody this, the more natural it becomes. It's no longer something you think about. It's just how you are. And from the outside, this looks like a complete transformation. But from within, it feels like a return to a version of yourself that was always there, beneath the noise, beneath the conditioning, beneath the patterns you had outgrown. And now that you've reconnected with that, everything else begins to fall into place around it. Not perfectly, not instantly, but naturally. In a way that doesn't require force. In a way that doesn't require constant effort. Because you're no longer building your life from the outside in, you're allowing it to unfold from the inside out. And as this way of living becomes more natural to you, you begin to realize that what once felt like change is actually a process of remembering, a gradual return to a state where you are no longer fragmented by expectations, no longer pulled apart by the need to be different versions of yourself, depending on who you are around, but instead you exist as one consistent presence, steady across environments, grounded regardless of circumstances. This consistency within you begins to dissolve a deeper layer of internal resistance that you may not have even been fully aware of before. A resistance that once came from trying to manage how you were perceived, from trying to anticipate reactions, from trying to maintain a sense of control over how others experienced you. But now that need is fading. You're no longer preoccupied with controlling impressions. You're no longer adjusting your expression to fit expectations that were never aligned with you to begin with. And in letting go of that, something liberating happens. Your energy becomes more fluid, yet at the same time more rooted. You move naturally but not unconsciously. You express freely but not excessively. You engage but without losing yourself in the process. And this balance, it's something people can feel immediately. Because most interactions in the world are built on imbalance, on one person overextending while the other withdraws, or one person seeking while the other avoids, on subtle exchanges of energy that are often driven by unconscious patterns rather than awareness. But when you enter a space now, you're not participating in those patterns anymore. You're not seeking to take. You're not trying to give in order to receive. You're simply present. And that presence, it disrupts unconscious dynamics. Not aggressively, not forcefully, but clearly. It becomes harder for people to project onto you, harder for them to pull you into roles you no longer resonate with, harder for them to define you based on outdated versions of who you used to be, because you're no longer holding on to those versions yourself. And this is where a deeper level of freedom begins to emerge. The freedom of not needing to be understood in order to feel secure. The freedom of not needing to explain your silence, your distance, or your choices. The freedom of allowing others to have their perceptions without feeling the need to correct them. And within that freedom, your energy becomes even more refined. You start to notice that you're less affected by external fluctuations. Situations that once would have disturbed your peace now pass through you without leaving a lasting impact. Interactions that once would have triggered overthinking now feel neutral, almost distant. not because you've become indifferent, but because you've become anchored. There's a center within you now that remains stable, even when everything around you shifts. And the more you trust that center, the less you feel the need to look outside of yourself for direction. You begin to rely on your own internal sense of alignment more than anything else, not in a rigid way, but in a grounded way. You listen inwardly before acting outwardly. You feel into situations before responding to them. You allow clarity to emerge instead of forcing decisions prematurely. And this way of moving, it changes the pace of your life. Things may appear slower on the surface, but they are more precise, more intentional, more aligned. You're no longer rushing into experiences just to feel something. You're allowing experiences to come to you when they resonate. And this shift, it naturally filters what enters your life. You start attracting interactions that reflect your level of awareness. You begin encountering people who engage with you from a place of presence rather than unconscious patterns. And at the same time, anything that doesn't match that begins to fade more effortlessly. Not because you're pushing it away, but because there's no longer a resonance to sustain it. And this is something that can feel both peaceful and unfamiliar. Because as your life becomes more aligned, it also becomes quieter. Less chaotic, less crowded, less filled with unnecessary noise. And in that quiet, you meet yourself more deeply. Not the version of yourself shaped by external influences, but the version that exists underneath all of that. The one that doesn't need to perform, the one that doesn't need to prove, the one that simply is. And the more you connect with that, the less you feel the need to return to anything that pulls you away from it. Even if it means outgrowing certain spaces, even if it means releasing connections that once felt significant, even if it means standing alone at times, in a way that feels unfamiliar but honest. Because what you found within yourself holds more stability than anything external ever could. And this is where your strength truly deepens. Not in how you handle external situations, but in how you remain connected to yourself within them. Because life will continue to move, people will continue to come and go, situations will continue to shift in ways you cannot control. But your relationship with yourself, that becomes your constant. And as long as that remains intact, everything else becomes easier to navigate. Not because challenges disappear, but because you're no longer losing yourself within them. You remain present, you remain aware, you remain aligned. And from that place, your decisions carry clarity, your actions carry intention, your energy carries stability. And this stability, it continues to shape your reality in ways that don't need to be forced. You're no longer chasing outcomes. You're no longer trying to control every detail. You're allowing life to respond to the energy you embody. And as that happens, things begin to fall into place in a way that feels natural rather than constructed. Opportunities appear without excessive effort. Connections form without force. Clarity arrives without overthinking. Because you're no longer operating from a place of lack. You're operating from alignment. And alignment, it organizes your life in ways that effort alone never could. It removes what isn't meant for you. It reinforces what is. It guides you without needing to push you. And the more you trust that, the more you relax into your own path. You stop comparing your journey to others. You stop questioning your pace. You stop doubting your direction. Because you can feel that you're exactly where you need to be. Even if it doesn't look like what you once expected. Even if it doesn't match what others understand. And that quiet certainty, it becomes your foundation. A foundation that doesn't need validation. A foundation that doesn't need approval. A foundation that simply exists because you've experienced it for yourself. And from here, everything you continue to build, everything you continue to experience, everything you continue to become, it all emerges from a place that is real, grounded, and fully aligned with who you are now. And in that alignment, you begin to understand something that once felt out of reach, that nothing you were searching for was ever outside of you. It was simply buried beneath layers of noise, expectation, and unconscious patterns that you have now outgrown. What you carry now is quieter, but far more powerful. It doesn't need recognition to exist. It doesn't need validation to feel real. Because you feel it, in the way you move, in the way you respond, in the way you no longer abandon yourself just to maintain what was never meant to stay. And as you continue forward, you're not becoming someone new. You're simply no longer hiding who you've always been. And that is why everything feels different now. Not because the world changed, but because you did. Chosen one, this isn't a phase, it's a return to who you've always been underneath it all. And the more you stay in that truth, the more your presence will speak for you. If this feels like your path, stay connected and subscribe when it feels right.